What's up everyone and welcome back to the UFC News Hub. Today let's get started with Justin Gaethje wanted to fight Arman Tsarukyan or Charles Oliveira at UFC 313. Gaethje is already set to throw down with Rafael Fiziev in a highly anticipated rematch at UFC 313, but after Dan Hooker pulled out of their scheduled fight, Gaethje had his own wish list for replacements. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss an update. According to Gaethje, his ideal options were either Arman Tsarukyan, a rising contender, or a rematch with former champion Charles Oliveira. Both fights made sense for Gaethje because they were the top-ranked contenders right above him. Exactly the type of opponents that could fast-track him to a title shot. When Gaethje sat down for an interview with Paavo Verbeek for Polsat Sport, he gave some honest insight into how the UFC's matchmaking process works behind the scenes. Gaethje explained that Mateusz Gamrot was never even considered as an option, which surprised some fans. I never heard Gamrot. I think, the UFC trying to make a replacement for Dan Hooker. They never considered Gamrot. That's a very different fight, a different night, said Justin Gaethje. Instead, Gaethje had a clear focus, the biggest names that could put him in title contention. For me, off the top of the list was Oliveira and Tsarukyan because those are the guys that are ranked above me, the number 1 and number 2 contenders. They're the guys that if I get a win over them, I go exactly where I want to go, and that's a fight with Makhachev, said Justin Gaethje. Of course, matchmaking doesn't always work out perfectly, especially on short notice. In the end, the UFC offered Gaethje a rematch with Rafael Fiziev, and Gaethje accepted, trusting his team to make the best decision for his career. Being that I'm getting ready for a fight, I have to say yes to anybody. Me being the number 3 guy in the world, it's a big business, and I had to really rely on my coach and my manager to make that decision for me, said Justin Gaethje. The rematch with Fiziev is booked for 3 rounds, given that Fiziev is stepping in on short notice. Gaethje expects fireworks. After all, their first fight was an all-out war that earned Fight of the Night honors. He's world-class on his feet, striking. He's very dangerous, so I think I need to be on point. I think it's going to be an exciting fight. I think I'm going to get another bonus, and I think coming off a loss and then blowing his knee in the Gamrot fight, he's going to be as hungry as ever. I think he's going to be very dangerous, and I think it's going to be very exciting, said Justin Gaethje. Interestingly, while Gaethje was locked in for Fiziev, Charles Oliveira made it clear that he was ready to step in if the UFC had called. Even though Oliveira was traveling with his family, the former champ posted a message to UFC brass. "I'm just a phone call away, Dana White, Sean Shelby," said Charles Oliveira. As for what's next, Gaethje already knows exactly who he wants after UFC 313, Islam Makhachev. If Gaethje beats Fiziev and does it in style, he believes that should punch his ticket to a title shot. While speaking to Jim Rome, Gaethje broke down why timing is everything in the UFC. Timing is everything in this sport. We saw it with Dustin Poirier. I beat him, and then he fought for the belt right after that. I think the timing is going to line up well. I go in there, get a finish, with an outstanding performance like I always do. I think I'll be one of the guys they consider to fight Makhachev, said Justin Gaethje. This raises the big question. Would you want to see Justin Gaethje versus Islam Makhachev for the UFC lightweight title? Makhachev himself has shown interest in fighting Gaethje before, so if everything lines up, this could become a reality. With Gaethje's explosive style and Makhachev's elite grappling, that's a matchup fans would go crazy for. First things first though, Gaethje has to handle business at UFC 313, and as always with the highlight, expect violence. Dana White cancels fight last minute. This weekend's UFC card has been hit with unexpected chaos as one of the scheduled fights was officially scrapped during the weigh-ins. Lana Carolina has pulled out of her fight against Montana De La Rosa, and the bout has now been canceled entirely. According to reports and later confirmed by the UFC itself, Carolina withdrew due to weight management issues. This isn't just a random mishap either. It's part of a troubling pattern that's followed Carolina throughout her UFC career. This latest withdrawal marks the 3rd time she's missed weight in the UFC, and that's a serious red flag for any fighter hoping to maintain their spot on the roster. The first incident happened in 2021 when Carolina came in 2.2 pounds over the limit ahead of her fight against Poliana Botelho. Then, just last year, she missed weight again, this time by 3 pounds before her fight with Yulia Stoliarenko. And now, here we are again with another failed weight cut that not only forced her off the card but also left her opponent, Montana De La Rosa, without a fight after completing her entire training training camp and cutting weight successfully. For a professional fighter in the UFC, this is the kind of repeated mistake that can put your entire career in jeopardy. Dana White said, "Fighters missing weight repeatedly is a serious problem. It's unprofessional, and when you sign a contract to fight, you're expected to hold up your end of that deal," said Dana White. That's the reality of fighting at the highest level. Making weight is not optional, it's part of the job. And when a fighter consistently shows they can't handle that responsibility, it sends a message that they can't be trusted to show up ready to compete. This sport is too cutthroat for that. The UFC gives opportunities to fighters who show they're willing to do the work, and when you blow your chance like this, not once, not twice, but 3 times, it puts your future in serious doubt. Michael Bisping said, "Look, you miss weight once. Okay, it happens. You miss weight twice. Now we've got a problem. You miss weight 3 times? That's just telling the world you're either not disciplined enough or you're in the wrong weight class," said Michael Bisping. That's exactly the conversation people are having now. Is this a case of poor discipline, or is Lana Carolina simply trying to fight in the wrong division? Either way, the UFC isn't known for being patient when it comes to repeat offenders. Fighters who repeatedly miss weight don't just hurt themselves, they disrupt the entire card, waste their opponent's training camp, and frustrate matchmakers who spend weeks or months putting these fights together. The fans lose out too, because now a fight they were excited to see is off the table, all because one fighter couldn't hold up their end of the deal. Right now, there's no official word on what Dana White and the UFC will decide for Carolina's future, but history tells us this could easily be the end of her run in the promotion. The UFC has cut fighters for less, and with 3 weight misses on her record, Carolina's margin for error is gone. The harsh truth is, if you want to fight in the UFC, you need to be reliable. And right now, that's the one thing Lana Carolina isn't. The question now is simple. Should the UFC cut her after this repeated issue, or does she deserve one more chance to prove she belongs? What do you think? Conor McGregor reveals shocking UFC payday. Once again, the biggest star in MMA history has reminded the world why his name sits at the very top of the fight game. This time, it's not because of a knockout or trash talk, it's all about the money. McGregor claimed that his payday from his last UFC fight in 2021 was larger than the combined earnings of every single fighter on the Dmitry Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev boxing card. It all started when a tweet surfaced, breaking down the fighter purses from that high-profile boxing event. The numbers showed a total payout of over $32 million across the whole card, which would be a huge number for most fighters. But McGregor, for him, it was just another opportunity to flex his unmatched earning power. Conor McGregor said, "If accurate, I made more than this entire card's estimated payout combined in my last outing for the UFC in 2021. I garnered record gate as well as record pay-per-views for the company through my service," said Conor McGregor. For most fighters, numbers like that are a fantasy. But with McGregor, it's absolutely believable. His 2021 fight, the trilogy clash with Dustin Poirier at UFC 264, wasn't just a fight, it was a global spectacle. The event brought in over 1.8 million pay-per-view buys and set a record-breaking live gate of more than $15 million. That's the kind of success that only happens when McGregor is involved. Whether he's winning, losing, or just talking, people pay attention, and they pay money. And don't forget, this is the same man who made over $100 million fighting Floyd Mayweather. So when McGregor says he made over $32 million for one UFC fight, it's not hard to believe. It's just another reminder that McGregor isn't like any other fighter. He's a brand, a business, and a walking event. Love him or hate him, one thing's clear. McGregor doesn't just fight for money, he fights to remind everyone exactly who runs the show. And with this latest flex, he's made one thing crystal clear: no one does it bigger than Conor McGregor.